It's very common that some guys will try and feed in the underhook here, okay? So what I need to do, obviously, with anything, I need to try and stop it as early as possible. If he digs this in deep and he starts high elbow, and he starts bumping, I have to go to some other stuff, okay? If I don't deal with it, of course, he's gonna start coming up to his knees, okay? So sometimes this is gonna happen from him doing a good job, yeah, going here like this, framing well, and then feeding it in. Sometimes I actually bait him for it. I actually want him to start feeding in the underhook, okay? And before he gets too deep, so really I only want him wrist deep. I'm gonna pinch my elbow, and this arm here, I'm just gonna swim back inside. And I'm gonna use the blade of my wrist right in the crook of his arm here. And I'm just gonna jam this back down to the mat, okay? If he's particularly strong, I might even use this one and just reinforce it. So if he tries to punch in that underhook, so this is cool anyway. This is a good way just to stop the underhook really early on, okay? But there's a nice little sequence here where we can start taking advantage depending on what he gives us, okay? So as soon as he feeds in here with the underhook, I pinch my elbow close to me, swim the arm inside and jam it down. Now if you see here, his hand is pretty much under my armpit. That's the first one we're gonna try and take advantage of, okay? I need him to try and bring this arm out, but I don't want to give him too much space. So if I lift my head up like this, I stay back and away, yeah, his arm's gonna fly out, okay? So I want to try and use my chin a little bit. If he tries to pull it out now, it's going to be a little bit harder, okay? And then I like controlling his elbow, and then I'll just lock it in place here like this, okay? So my chin stays over the top. I don't lift up too much because his hand might start flying out, okay? So here like this, I'm going to put his elbow to the floor and start bumping it up and away. So I create this angle here like this. And then I slide my chest down and away. And if you can see here, look, more of his arm starts to get exposed like this. And this is where it's in danger of flying out. So I'm gonna keep my chin over the top again. If I'm like this and I'm sliding back, his hand's gonna pop out. So as I start sliding back, I cover it with the chin. Once I've got the back of his hand covered by my armpit, that's when I can start applying the wrist lock. So in a little bit deeper here like this, either he's trying to pull it out or I'm sliding it back. Once I catch it there, now I know I can get the wrist lock. So we'll see the angle here like this. All I need is downward pressure in towards the floor. So I pull the shoulder back, lock it in, and then I squeeze it down to the mat. So as he feeds in the underhook, I pinch it. I don't let it go too far. Swim the arm inside. So I'm using the blade of my wrist right in the crook of the arm here, and I just jam it back down to the mat. He's going to try and punch that in further. A lot of times they can't. If they're super strong, like I said, I might jam it down with the other hand. It's a good way of just defending the underhook anyway. Okay, I want to try and keep his hand under my armpit. So I'm going to use my chin a little bit here. Sometimes I'll just hook his elbow and just lock it in like this. Now I have a bit more control over his whole arm. Okay, so use your chin, don't let it slide out too much. I'm going to pull my chest back over his chest. I keep my chin in place. Once my armpit is over the back of the hand, now I can start to drive forward. I've got the angle in the wrist, and now down to the floor. So he swims in, pinch, jam it back down, secure that arm. I can open it up, drag it back, and then go. Now what's going to happen sometimes is I can't pull myself back enough to get on top of his hand, okay? So the wrist lock is not going to be available. So now we can start hitting the muscle crush, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep his hand under my armpit like this. I can even pull it in a little bit. I'm going to hug under his arm and grab my own tricep. And then this hand is going to try and grab here like this, okay? What I need to do with this muscle crush is close this gap. This is what a lot of people struggle with on this one. When they're here like this, they end up driving forward and they actually open up the arm. We need to close it. So I'm trying to put his hand down towards his shoulder. So I punch it in. So the blade of my wrist is cutting in against his forearm and bicep. I hug under his arm, grab my own tricep, and here like this. So I can finish here like this. Sometimes I'll pull everything back and then crunch it in like this. Like I said, some people struggle with the squeeze on this. Okay, what they end up doing is pulling up like this, not closing the angle, or driving forward like this, not closing the angle. Okay, I pull my head down into my shoulders, shrug my shoulders, and then hang back as I squeeze like this. If you can't get that, don't worry. All we're gonna start doing is walking around his body, and then I hit a sit out. Same goal is to get his hand to his shoulder. So when I go into my sit out, I turn my back to him, but now all my weight is forcing his hand back down to his shoulder. I was being a bit nice there. Look at my hand position here. If I'm in deep like this, I circle round and I sit through. This is already on. Normally I'll be doing a full sit through, and then I can sit into it like this. You see here, his hand is actually touching his shoulder now. So when he feeds in the underhook, jam it. I can't release the hand. Some guys will actually rather keep it in there. They'll even keep trying to punch it through. So I hug deep here like this. Again, I'm always trying to open his arm. Even that is going to close the angle in his arm. If I keep it here like this, it's a bigger angle. So I bump it up, it's already closing, I can feel it. That's already going on. If I need to, I can walk around. And I'm going to try and keep his arm vertical. Another thing with this is people drop it here like this. So I'm going to try and keep his arm, he's lifting his hips because that's already going on. Full sit through and then sit back into it. So what we're next going to get is this arm does come out. When he feeds in and I go here like this, sometimes this flies out before I get any sort of control. Now what I don't want to do is lift my elbow. He goes for the underhook again, he gets deeper, I'm in trouble. So when we fed it in here and his arm comes out, I lose it, I drop my elbow. If he tries to underhook now, no chance. Okay, what I'm going to do now is slide this arm up to his neck. I'm going to karate chop his neck, palm facing out. That's important because I want to use the blade of my wrist against his neck. Okay, so karate chop the neck, palm facing him, and connect the hands. So palm to palm grip. Now when I connect my elbows, if you see my hips are here in the middle. I'm not going to be able to, my arms are up here. I'm not going to be able to connect my elbows if my hips aren't in line. So once I karate chop, like this, I go knees together towards the head and post. The post is important, that's going to allow me to lift up like this. Now my hips are in line with my elbows. I can squeeze. This one's lifting his head, this one is cutting it off. And as I do that, I keep my head low. If I'm here like this, he might be able to weave his head out, he might be able to weave his arms inside. So as I lift his head, this one chops, my head drops. So he swims in, block it. This time the arm comes out, keep the elbow down. If I go too early, yeah, he's going to take that underhook. So that's elbow down. Now I slide up, karate chop his neck. You see my elbow doesn't really leave his chest, I don't do this. Karate chop the neck, palm out. Connect the hands. I'm going to go knee to knee, line up with his head, post out, chest stays low. Connect your elbows. This one's lifting his head, this one's chopping the head off. So we've got three techniques. He swims it in. As he tries to take it out, there's the wrist lock. If it goes in and he continues to punch it through, you won't allow the wrist lock. We can hit the muscle crush with the sit through as well. If we're here like this, I jam it back down and it flies out, no problem. We'll karate chop the neck and choke.